Hey guys, this is Mark, and in this video I want to look at the dangers of blaming your spouse, and we're going to look at a path to understanding instead. In any committed relationship, conflicts and disagreements are inevitable, of course, we know. However, how couples navigate these challenges can impact the health and longevity of their marriage. So, one common pitfall that many couples, especially neurodiverse couples, fall into is a tendency to blame one another for problems. And this habit can be detrimental, leading to resentment and a breakdown of communication. So, let's try to understand the blame game. Blaming your spouse might provide a temporary sense of relief or a way to deflect responsibility, but it's ultimately going to harm both of you and the relationship as a whole. So when one partner feels unfairly accused or scapegoated, it's going to create a cycle of defensiveness. It's going to lead to further conflict. So instead of fostering understanding, blaming often breeds resentment and distance. Now, let's look at the psychology behind blame. Psychologically, blaming others is often a defense mechanism. It allows people to avoid confronting their own feelings of inadequacy and guilt. For example, if one partner feels overwhelmed by household responsibilities, she might lash out at her spouse for not contributing enough, rather than admitting her own struggles with time management or stress. Additionally, when blame becomes a regular occurrence, it can erode trust and intimacy. So when spouses start to perceive each other as adversaries rather than allies, they may struggle to communicate effectively and support one another, leading to emotional disconnection. Now, let's look at moving toward accountability. Instead of blaming, it's important to approach conflicts with a mindset of accountability. This means recognizing your own role in a situation and expressing feelings without assigning fault. For example, instead of saying, "You never help with chores," you might want to say instead, "I feel overwhelmed with the chores and I would appreciate your help." This approach emphasizes collaboration and understanding rather than confrontation. Now, let's look at some effective communication strategies. We'll start with I statements. Framing your feeling with I statements emphasizes personal experience rather than accusations. For example, "I feel hurt when my efforts aren't acknowledged" is way more constructive than "you never appreciate what I do." So use I statements. Next, we want to focus on solutions. Instead of fixating on who is to blame, direct conversations toward finding solutions. What can both partners do to address the issue at hand? Next, let's look at practicing active listening. With active listening, you ensure that both spouses feel heard and understood. You want to listen without interruption, validate each other's feelings, and this can foster a better understanding of each other's perspectives. One of my favorite things to preach about is paraphrase. You listen. In other words, I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to look in your direction and nod as you're talking. I'm going to tactfully step in every once in a while and paraphrase back what you said so I can make sure that I got it. And then I'm going to validate by saying, "I hear you, I understand you, I respect the fact that that's your opinion on the matter." Next, let's look at taking responsibility. Own up to your part in the conflict. Acknowledge your faults, and this will pave the way for a more open dialogue and reconciliation. So, taking responsibility for your contribution to the problem is actually the opposite of blaming. And lastly, we're going to talk about how to establish a safe space. You want to create an environment where both spouses can express themselves without fear of judgment or retaliation. In other words, when you speak to me, I'm not going to judge what you just said as it shouldn't have been that way, or it should have been a different way, or it would have been better if you would have said this. And also, I'm going to avoid retaliation. In other words, when you tell me what's truly on your mind and you're honest with me, I'm not going to hold it against you. So, blaming your spouse may seem like a quick way to address frustrations, but it's going to lead to deeper issues in the long run. Remember, it's not about placing blame, but about working together as a team. We're not shooting for perfection. We're simply shooting for more wins than losses. Blaming has never worked for you. It's always worked against you. Let me repeat. Blaming your spouse has never worked for you. It has always worked against you.